Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Want to go ahead and get to something interesting I saw on Monday. And listen, I'll admit, a little bit of a slower time. This is probably the slowest time really on the sports calendar. We've talked about it over the last couple weeks. NBA finals are done. Not that we talk much NBA. College hoops portal cycle and everything is done. We've started on our off-season analysis and grades over the last couple days. A little early for college football. We don't talk a ton of NFL on this show, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that is increasingly important this time of year, though, is recruiting in both football and basketball. And I really think especially basketball this time of year is crucial. At the end of the day, we are now in late June. And the thing about the way the calendar works, this is kind of the time of year where coaching staffs really kind of have prioritized and kind of figured out who they are going after in the upcoming senior class, in this case, class of 2025, right? We have the open periods, the live periods early in the springtime, May, June. By now, schools kind of have a pretty good idea of, again, who they're pursuing, where do they stand, who are they backing off on, whatever. Well, I bring it up because, as I said, Monday, we got what I thought was a very interesting piece of news. And based on the timing, I think it makes it even more interesting as Malachi Moreno, 7-foot center from Georgetown, Kentucky, the #1 ranked center in the class of 2025, according to On3, top 20 prospect in On3, top 25 prospect in 24/7 Sports. But the bottom line remains this kid is very special. And on Monday, he did, in fact, cut his list down to 8 schools. Those 8 schools, let me make sure I get them all correct. They are Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisville, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Arkansas. And let me just say this. It's early. I don't think anything is official. I think it's too early to call anybody the definitive favorite or that he's an inch away or he's a day away from committing. But again, based on timing and based on a couple other things, I think if you're a Kentucky fan with that new head coach, that new coaching staff with Mark Pope, you got to feel very, very good where you stand. And if you're asking me to handicap it right now, I would deem them to be the leader, which we'll explain in a minute. First off, let me say this about the kid, okay? Listen, I'm not a high school evaluator. I'm not saying I've seen every center in America. I'm not saying I've seen every player in America. But first of all, the 2025 class is really good. And we'll probably spend more time this summer talking about it because the players are difference makers. The Boozer twins, Koa Pete, Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff, on and on. But Malachi Moreno, really good. 7-foot center. I've even seen him listed at 7'1". I might have just said that a minute ago. Forgive me. But this kid is really, he's not just one of these kids, he's 7 foot, kind of plops in the middle of the paint. I am so impressed when I watch him by his hands, by his ability to catch the ball in traffic, by his footwork in the post, by his activity, by his athleticism. This ain't no 7'1" stiff that's just playing basketball because he's 7'1". This is a kid that has skill, has touch. He kind of has this nice little 1-foot jumper that kind of like the fadeaway Dirk jumper. Really, really, really talented kid. And so you can see why he's been prioritized by so many different schools. But as I said, when I look at when this announcement comes, that he's down to 8, I think if you're a Kentucky fan, you got to feel really good on where you stand with this kid. First off, and I should mention, by the way, has taken an official visit to Iowa, has taken some unofficials, Arkansas when Eric Musselman was there, Kentucky, Louisville, etc. But why I'm thinking that Kentucky should feel good, let me explain. First off, we all know, in-state kid, and these kids grow up wanting to play for Kentucky. Same time, though, and I think this is what's important. If you're a Kentucky kid that's good enough to play Kentucky, this is the moment in time that you want to be that Kentucky kid. Because Mark Pope, and listen, I have refrained from heavily criticizing John Calipari. I think he did a lot of great things at Kentucky. I think there's a lot of things that could have been done better. As I've said a million times, I think it got stale. I think it's best for him to start over, and I certainly think it's best for Kentucky basketball to have a fresh voice in that locker room. Same time, one thing I will criticize Cal on, I don't know that he ever prioritized the Kentucky high school players enough. And I do think he let some good players slip away, some good players get away. And I think that's obviously something that Mark Pope is prioritizing as the new head coach of the University of Kentucky, is basically saying, like, wait a second now, there is a lot of talent in this state. I got to make sure to take advantage of all of it. And I got to make sure that the best players don't leave this state and end up playing for me. By the way, should mention, as you can see on the bottom of the screen below, we do have our Torres on Kentucky page, Torres on UK page. If you're on Twitter, make sure you're following there. But why I think the Moreno news is interesting. One Kentucky kid. Most of them, not all of them, because I know we're going to get some Louisville fans that get mad. Oh, Torres, you're always saying nice things about Kentucky. But most Kentucky kids grow up wanting to play for Kentucky. But this is a staff that is very clearly prioritizing keeping the best players home. What happened at Mark Pope's first press conference when he got the job? Yeah, you already know. Travis Perry was there, and what did Mark Pope say? I don't have the exact quote in front of me. Forgive me, but he said something to the effect of, like, basically, this kid's going to hit a lot of he's already hit a lot of three-pointers in this building, and he's going to hit a lot more here at Rupp Arena. Thought it was interesting, and we talked about it at the time. Trent Noah, one of the top 5 leading scorers in the history of the state, was committed to South Carolina, decommits immediately. There's not only interest from Kentucky, but this kid commits to Kentucky. And so you have the top 2 players from the class of 2024, this on the heels of Reed Shepherd's incredible year. And by the way, I don't think Mark Pope's doing it just for PR purposes. These kids are good enough to play in his system. And the 2025 class is a great class for Kentucky high school basketball. Again, not an evaluator, but I know the big names, okay? And why the timing of Malachi Moreno cutting his list is interesting is as follows. Malachi Moreno is coming off an unofficial visit to Kentucky. Now, he was playing in a tournament in the Lexington area over the weekend. Kind of worth noting. Every game he played, there was at least one Kentucky, one UK staff member in the building. But then 2, this is the other part. He took an unofficial visit, and he took an unofficial visit with another kid by the name of Jasper Johnson. Who is Jasper Johnson? He is a definitive 5-star, definitive top 10 player in the class of 2025, a player that has deep Kentucky ties. He has family that have played at Kentucky. I think I'll be blunt. I think he has family that worked at Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken, at some point. Did not play high school ball in the state of Kentucky last year. He went to one of the prep schools, Link Academy, in Missouri. But at the same time, Jasper Johnson and Malachi Moreno were both on campus over the course of this weekend. And so I just bring it up because if you don't think that Mark Pope was selling those kids, hey, wait a second now. You two are both from here. You can, to quote the old saying, you can rock that Kentucky blue. And oh, by the way, beyond that, you can do this together. You can win at the highest level. You can win for your state. You can compete for national championships, and you can do it all right here. And so Jasper Johnson's a different deal. We're not talking about him right now. But when it comes to Malachi Moreno, I think sometimes all you got to do is add up the puzzle pieces. You got to add up the fact that this was a kid that is from Kentucky, that, he's spoken in many interviews that I've read about how important his family is, how important, how he has been prioritized by the Kentucky coaching staff since they took over. But then, as importantly, he cuts his list literally the day after he visits Kentucky. I don't know how you can't feel good if you're not a Kentucky Wildcat. And listen, let me say this again. I think it's too early to start calling it for anybody. North Carolina wants him bad. Louisville wants him bad. Pat Kelsey ain't going to give up on it. Indiana, obviously right over the border, is intrigued as well. But I just look at the fact, Kentucky kid coming off a visit. I think it's worth noting, I just think all of the timing works out where it's like, you don't cut your list right after a visit unless you're starting to make a move towards knowing where you want to go. And so the timing is interesting. And I think if you're a Wildcats fan, you got to feel really, really good about where things are right now. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. As I mentioned, make sure to follow the Torres on UK account on Twitter. And oh, by the way, We got our Hope and Pope t-shirts. That's right, baby. Hope and Pope. AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. We've sold a ton. Appreciate your support. If you want one, that is the best place to get them.